Wilson is Seattle, but now there's a report from Dan Patrick saying the Seahawks, they're not happy with the way Russ is handling all this, and they use that dreaded word, we hate this word, unsustainable for the situation in Seattle. Brandon, this feels like it's going to get worse before it gets better, like my hair every morning. Is the relationship, Brandon, between Russ and the Seahawks sustainable?
Well, first, this isn't about Russell Wilson. This is about Pete Carroll. Going back to the Dan Patrick interview, that was scheduled a week prior from the NFL and the Seahawks because of the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. So it was like the perfect storm for that guy to go out there and be asked those questions. He had like 30-something interviews already set up. So what is the man supposed to do? He's going to be honest now because of what you guys haven't done. This is about Pete Carroll, not Russell Wilson. I love Pete Carroll. I love the Seattle Seahawks organization. I love John Snyder. Going back to their first year in Seattle, and when I was leaving the Denver Broncos, Pete Carroll called me. He said, "Brandon, I want you to come help me build this this franchise." I flew out there. They put me on the scene, playing Misha and I. We flew around the stadium. They had our name up there, and then we sat down. He said, "I want you to come," and I didn't do it. I ended up going to Miami. It was a big mistake for me. But fast forward to my last cup of tea. My last cup of tea was with these guys. Absolutely love Pete. Love the way he leads. We talk about Bill Belichick all the time, but when you talk about great leaders, Pete Carroll stands right there next to Bill Belichick. It's like, pick which one do you want. I love Tell the Truth Mondays, where he gives everybody the opportunity to stand in front of the team and say, "This is my complaint," so everybody can come together and then move forward together. I love when the energy he brings out to practice every single day. But with that being said, I do not like his stubbornness. I do not like that his inability to adapt. Like, we know who you are, but now you have to evolve. We know you want to play defense and play defense the way you've done it for a very long time. It worked back then, but it's not working right now. Offensively, we know what got you to those Super Bowls. We know what helped you win those national championships. We know that you went out there and you bet on Russell Wilson. But now what you have to do is say, Russ, this is what you want. I have to believe in you. Because if you're telling this guy, I want you to hand it off first, second, and third down, I don't believe that you can stand back there and drop back 40 times if we give you the protection, then what you're telling this guy is that, I don't believe in you. You're telling this guy and you're taking away his confidence. So until Pete Carroll radically changes philosophy, yes, Jenna, it's going to be unsustainable. Nick, think about this. Week 9, they were 6-2. What happened after Week 9? Pete Carroll signed a 4-year extension. Russell Wilson was leading the MVP race by far. His defense was on pace to be the NFL's worst defense ever. So some would say, who was behind that extension? Russell Wilson. So now you're telling us, oh, well, you can get me the extension, but I'm not willing to bet on you and give you what you need to lead this team and give you the keys to the franchise. It makes no sense to me.
So we got a real problem here, is what it sounds like, and one that, to Brandon's credit, Brandon was talking about a month ago, but Russell Wilson wasn't talking to anybody publicly, so it didn't pick up steam until Russell talked to the media, Russell talked to Dan Patrick, and then Dan Patrick furthered the story yesterday with his own reporting, which confirmed some of the stuff Brandon been saying a few weeks ago. What it sounds to me like you have in Seattle right now, Brandon, to use a messy metaphor, you have like a gorgeous $5 million alpine skiing lodge and a Lamborghini. Those two things are awesome independently, but they don't really go great together. Like, it's like, well, I can't get my Lamborghini up to the lodge, and once I get there, it's all mountain and snowy. Can't really drive it. So, like, I'd like them both, but together they don't work. So folks will say, wait, but they did work. But that was when the Lamborghini was an ATV. That was when the Lamborghini was a young Russell Wilson, who was still brilliant and clutch and special, but not yet a fully formed MVP candidate. And that was when you did have the great defense. And so I think all of a sudden, this is becoming a story that was, or a problem that was like on a simmer, and it is quickly, Wilds, being turned up to a boil, and the lid's about to pop off. Because I don't think Pete Carroll is in the business of changing at near age 70, and Russell Wilson seems to be in the business of talking more in his mid-30s than we've ever heard before. So I don't know what the solve here is for Seattle.
Well, I think that Russ is trying to solve it via public pressure, right? So, Brandon, this seems like, because it's been so public, it is a breakdown of a private conversation. So I'll give you a quick example. If you, after this, you're like, wow, stop wearing lapel pins, that's my thing. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to. And then another time you send me a text like, yo, chill with the lapel pins. I'm like, no. And then if I see on a report, yeah, I'm having fun on the show, hey, but Wild should get rid of those stupid lapel pins, the next day it would be, gone. And I'd be like, oh, okay, if Brandon's serious about it, he's going to embarrass me publicly, then it's gone. So the fact that this is playing out, Brandon, I know you're saying he's such a great leader. It's if he wants either more power, he wants the protection, or if he wants to change the philosophy, it feels like since this private conversations has broken down, like, all right, I got one more, lever to pull, and that's public pressure. And it seems a little more complicated. It seems like an outgrowth of like Keyshawn Johnson, like, throw me the darn ball. It's like, okay, hey. And then the next game, like, hey, you should probably throw Keyshawn the ball more. And it seems like Russ is doing sort of that at sort of a higher level.
Yeah, well, first, I don't think it has anything to do with power with Russ. I played with the guy. I trained with the guy. He's a phenomenal leader. Going in, there was there's always a question mark when these guys always say the right things and do the right things. Like, man, who is this dude? Is he all about building his brand? And what is he trying to sell us? But when you meet Russ and you really come into his circle, you really know, like, man, this dude is the real deal. So his intentions only comes down to one thing. He wants to be great. He wants to win a Super Bowl by any means necessary. So when you think about, what you just said, talking about trying to take it to the media and handle this in public, well, first, that's not who Russ is. And that's why I led with these things were already scheduled. Because of the Man of the Year award, the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, the NFL, the Seattle Seahawks set this stuff up a week or two ago. So it was just a perfect storm where Jason LaCanfora is the one that reported this. And then we responded to it. But, I mean, we did start the conversation a couple weeks ago. But what are you supposed to do if you're Russ? Like, right now, players know that they're... Go ahead, Nick.
No, listen, I have immense respect and admiration for Russ, and I know you know him personally. But I also don't think, and I think this is what Wildes was going to say, that we can just say, well, the interview was scheduled, so he has to say what he said. Russell Wilson has done interviews for a decade and never said anything interesting. He could have absolutely skirted this if he wanted to. He chose to turn the heat up. And by the way, he has earned that right. He has earned that right to, after a decade of team-first, exemplary behavior, if he feels the need to finally be like, you know what? I'm not going nuclear on you, but I am going to use the fact that I always say the right thing to my advantage. Because for the first time, I'm going to say something a little different than "Go Hawks." And it's going to be listened to very closely because I never say anything different than "Go Hawks." And by the way,
that's right. Go Badgers.
It worked. Like, it absolutely has worked. He wants this, it would appear, this public pressure out there because, as Wildes pointed out, Brandon, the private pressure must not have seemed to be working. And my answer for Seattle is, you got to keep him happy. You've been lucky. In sports, in media, in entertainment, the most talented people usually have oversized egos,
but Nick, let me
demands.
Push back. Nick,
yes.
All right, here,
Please.
Listen, this is what I believe, okay? I don't believe that Pete Carroll believes in Russ. That's what I believe, okay? I don't believe that Pete Carroll thinks he can drop back 40 times. Because when you look at Russ, with the highlights, it's always him scrambling and making these magnificent plays outside the pocket. It's not him sitting there and throwing in rhythm. It's not that. But you got to understand the maturation of a player. You got to understand how a guy can get better. And I don't believe that Pete Carroll thinks Russell Wilson is a guy that can then go out there and drop back 40 times and get it done. He truly believes you got to play good defense, you got to run the ball, and you take